Hello, and welcome to Wendy's Weird World. Today's story is The Ghosts of Coldwater Hollow. It's a tale about three young ghost hunters exploring a secluded ghost town nestled in the forgotten woods of South Carolina. If that or anything supernatural is not your cup of tea, this is your warning so you can skip the story and maybe come back for the next one. For everyone who's staying, let's get on with the story. The Ghosts of Coldwater Hollow. The trees here seem to close in around us as we drive further down the narrow back roads. It's as though the world beyond the forest doesn't exist anymore. Just miles of twisted oaks and pines, their branches forming a skeletal canopy over the cracked pavement. Chase sits in the driver's seat, his fingers drumming impatiently on the steering wheel. It feels as though he's been driving forever. It has been nearly 6 hours, and we are close to our destination. Our anticipation and excitement for the exploration and investigation is building. Ty is in the back seat, humming a tune under his breath and checking the equipment in his backpack. Meanwhile, I'm focused on the camera, checking the battery and spare battery for the 100th time. The footage today is going to be gold. After all, where better to get some spooky ghost footage than in a ghost town? Aleah, are you checking that camera again? Ty asks. Just making sure everything's ready to go. We're getting close, I reply. The first time I heard of Coldwater Hollow, I didn't think it was real. When I think of a ghost town, I picture a dusty desert settlement instead of the woods of South Carolina. The closest town is miles away. The old mill closed long before they repaved the highway, and they found it made more sense to take the highway through the town further north rather than continue past a dying community. This makes it much harder to get there in modern times. Also, there's a creek that runs along the southern and western borders of the town, which is where it got its name. This is it, Chase mutters as we cross over an old iron and asphalt bridge and prepare to take the final turn. The car slows as we turn onto the road. It's mostly patched and broken asphalt with some gravel, and even parts of it are dirt. The road runs parallel to the creek, and there, looming before us, is what's left of the once thriving mill town. The buildings are in poor shape and some are crumbling. Their windows, the ones left unbroken that is, are like empty eyes staring back at us, and the silence, it's unnerving. The wind even seems to avoid this place. Only the main road is able to be driven down. All other side roads in the residential areas are overgrown and crumbling. We park the car at the dead end outside the gates of the mill at the end of the main street. The three of us step out, our shoes crunching on the gravel, and the sound of the metal car doors closing seems to echo out across the ruins. We stretched for over a minute after such a long ride out there and grabbed our packs of equipment to get ready to explore. The air is heavy, thick with the smell of decay, much like old damp leaves on a forest floor. And something else. Something faint and metallic. I glance at Ty, who's already pulling up his ghost chat app, getting ready for the first signs of any restless spirits. The sun is low in the sky, and I think to myself, how perfect it's going to be that so much of this is going to be in the dark. We start with the church, I ask, my voice breaking the silence. I nodded down the road we had just driven down, since the church was almost in the middle of town. Chase nods, shouldering the bag with the rest of our gear. Let's do this. The old church is barely standing, its roof sagging inward and vines creeping up the walls and crawling inside the broken windows. As we step inside, I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. But when I look around, there's nothing. Just empty pews and broken stained glass windows. The vines that were so eager to crawl in have died once inside. The graveyard just outside of the church is about as run down as a graveyard can get. The headstones are so old that the names and the dates have been worn away by time. But the ghost chat app spits out the first word of the day: lost. I shiver, glancing over at Ty and Chase. They heard it too. Definitely not a welcoming vibe here, Ty says, half joking, but I can see the unease in his eyes. We set up the REM pods near the graves, and I focus on the camera as Chase starts asking questions to the air. Is anyone here with us? Do you want to tell us your story? Nothing. Just the first sign of wind rustling through the trees. Then, as if in response, one of the pods lights up and sounds off, casting an eerie glow over the gravestones as the sun sinks below the horizon. Cross, the chat app says. The voice was robotic and cold. Cross? Like crossover? Or like the ones on the graves? I ask out loud. Chase looks back at me, his brow furrowing. It's hard to tell. Maybe we'll get some context soon, Chase says. Yet the ghost chat app stays quiet. We move on to the old mill houses next. They're still standing, though just barely. Most of them are filled with dust and remnants of lives long abandoned, furniture draped in cobwebs, and family photos fading in broken frames. One house, though, feels different. The air is still, almost too still. There's less dust, and some furniture looks like it hasn't been there as long as the rest. Weird, Chase says, peering around. It's like someone's been here more recently. Before I can respond to my first thought, which is squatters, a noise echoes from outside. Sounds like footsteps. We freeze, listening. But when we peek through the dirty windows, there's no one there. My heart pounds in my chest as we quickly decide to move on. I thought to myself how it's an odd place for squatters since it's out in the middle of nowhere. Cold. The ghost chat app sounds off and we all three jump at the sound. It's September, but the weather here hasn't finished cooling down yet. It's pretty mild and comfortable this evening. We look around at each other, relieved that it was the app, but we're also pondering why it's saying cold. Dark. The app sounds off again. Do you need help? Ty asked to no one in particular. We pause and hope for a response. You, it finally responds. You want my help? Ty asked out loud. After waiting for a response that didn't come, we decided to keep walking toward the school. The school is built on the highest point in the small town, which is a hill between the church and the mill. It's in the worst shape of any of the buildings we've encountered so far. It's falling apart, and the roof is partially caved in. As we walk through the darkened hallways, I can almost hear the echoes of children's laughter. Except that's just my imagination, right? The ghost chat app starts going crazy now, spitting out words faster than we can keep up and process them. Blood, old, hungry. Ty's hands are shaking as he reads them out loud, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't like this, I mutter, but we keep going. Our curiosity is outweighing our fear, at least for now. In my head, I'm trying to put all the words together to see if it makes any sense. Lost, cross, cold, dark, you, blood, old, hungry. That last word really unsettled me. It made me think of demons. I like ghost hunting, and to be honest, ghosts don't bother me. But demons are a different story. I could tell that the other two were picking up on what I was thinking, so we decided to finish up here at the school and go to the mill. We definitely got some creepy content recorded so far. Between the strange noises and the ghost chat app words, not to mention being in a remote, abandoned town is creepy all by itself. The mill looms ahead, its dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. This is the last stop, and we're all on edge. We're glad the car is here outside of the mill, but the temptation to take our footage and leave is difficult to resist. But we find a large gap in the gate to get into the entrance of the mill. The air inside is thick with dust and the scent of something far more unpleasant. Bats flutter above, disturbed by our presence, and we immediately pull our hoods up. We split up to explore the second floor, and that's when things go wrong. Leave, says the ghost chat app. The old beams creak under our weight, and suddenly the floor gives way beneath us. I landed hard, the breath knocked out of me, but I'm not hurt. When I look up, I realize the collapse has separated us. Ty is trapped on the upper level, while Chase and I are stuck below. Ty, are you okay? I shout. Yeah, he calls back, but his voice is filled with panic. I'm not alone up here. Before I can ask what he means, I hear a struggle, a loud thud, and then Ty screams. My heart nearly stops. Ty! Move! Move! Ty's voice is desperate now, and I see him swing over the broken flooring like he's an action hero, landing hard next to us. His eyes are wide with terror, and I notice his necklace. It's a silver cross, now tarnished a black color. We gotta get out of here, now, he shouts, and we don't hesitate. We scramble through the dark, racing for the exit. We burst through the overgrown gap in the gate. My hoodie catches on a loose wire, and it rips from the force of me pulling myself through the gap. We're stumbling over roots and debris as we make our way back to the car. Chase fumbles with the keys, unlocking it and cursing under his breath as he tries to start the engine as I lock the doors. The car roars to life, and we speed down the narrow road, wincing as the overgrown branches scrape against the sides like skeletal fingers. I glance back and my blood runs cold. 3 dark figures with pale faces are running toward us and moving impossibly fast. They reach the car just as we pull away, one of them slamming into the back windshield. The glass cracks, spiderwebbing under the impact, making me shriek, and I see the creature's red eyes stare into mine as I quickly look away. "Faster, Chase!" I scream, clutching the seat as the car swerves around a tight curve. The last figure clings to the rear wiper and pounding on the glass. Chase takes the turn out of town hard, throwing it off balance. The creature tumbles into the darkness, taking the rear wiper with it as we speed away, over the iron bridge, leaving it and the town behind. The car roars down the back roads leading away from Coldwater Hollow, and the three of us are too terrified to speak yet. My hands are shaking as I grip the door handle, watching the road ahead. I half expect those figures to appear again, in the rearview mirror, or worse, right in front of us. The only sounds are the gravel crunching beneath the tires and our ragged breathing. "Did you see that?" Ty finally gasped from the back seat, his voice barely steady. What the hell were those things?" I realize now that Ty had been crouched down on the floorboards until now. "I don't know, man. I don't know," Chase mutters. His knuckles are white on the steering wheel. "But they weren't human." I turn in my seat, looking back at Ty. He's pale, his eyes wide and haunted. The cross around his neck is still swinging. I notice the black ash on it again. Whatever those things were, they didn't like the cross. "What happened up there?" I ask. My voice is barely a whisper. Ty shakes his head, still trying to catch his breath. "I fell backward on the floor when you guys fell down. I heard something, and then it grabbed me. I couldn't see much, but it was cold. So cold. And strong. He breaks off, his voice trembling. It tried to bite me, but my cross burned it. That's when I got away." A shiver runs down my spine, and I exchange glance with Chase. None of us say the word, but it hangs in the air between us. Vampires. "We need to get out of here," I say, my voice firm, "and never come back." Chase nods, accelerating as fast as the narrow road will allow. The trees blur by in a dark and twisted mess, and I keep glancing back, half expecting those figures to appear out of nowhere. But the road remains empty. It feels like hours before we can finally reach the main highway. The oppressive darkness of the back roads gives way to the dull glow of streetlights, and for the first time since we arrived in that cursed town, I feel like I can breathe again. Chase slows down as we merge onto the highway, the tension in the car slowly easing. We're all exhausted, physically and mentally, but none of us suggest stopping. Not yet. We need to put as much distance between us and that place as possible. "We're not talking about this, right?" Ty asks after a long silence. His voice is quiet. "Right," Chase agrees, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I nod. "No one would believe us anyway. They'd think we're crazy." Ty gives a bitter laugh. "Maybe we are. Crazy to come out to a ghost town in the middle of damn woods for a ghost hunting video." I don't respond. but I do a half nod. I can still feel the weight of that place pressing down on me. The words from the ghost chat app, the cold terror in Ty's voice, the sight of those figures chasing us. It's not something I'll ever forget, even if I wanted to. As the miles stretch out before us, I can't help but wonder what will happen to that town now. Will it stay hidden, tucked away in the back roads, waiting for the next unlucky group of explorers to stumble upon it? Or will the darkness that lurks there eventually spread, creeping out into the world beyond? I shudder, pushing the thoughts away. All I know is that we got out, barely. And whatever is still out there in that town, it's not our problem anymore. Besides, if we tell anyone, it could draw attention and more victims to those things. But deep down, I know I'll never shake the feeling that something is still watching us, waiting, lost, old, and hungry for blood. As we drive into the night, leaving the town further behind, I find myself reaching for the camera again to check the footage. Maybe it's just morbid curiosity, or maybe I need to convince myself that what we saw was real. But when I press play, all I hear is static, distorted, jumbled images that don't make any sense. Figures, I mutter under my breath, but there's also a part of me that's relieved. Some things are better left unseen, unremembered. Chase glances over at me. Everything okay? I nod, forcing a smile. Yeah, the footage is trash. Let's just get home. And so we drive into the night, the horrors of that town fading long into the distance behind us. But I know, no matter how far we go, that place will always haunt us. In the dark corners of our minds, and in the shadows that seem to move a little too fast. We'll remember. We can never forget Coldwater Hollow. Thanks so much for staying until the end of the story. I'd like to take a moment to warn against exploring abandoned buildings. While the idea of uncovering forgotten places might seem exciting, it's extremely dangerous, even without the threat of supernatural creatures. These structures are often unstable, with risk of collapse, sharp debris, and hidden hazards. In many cases, entering such locations is illegal due to trespassing laws, and you could face not only arrest but also hefty fines. Additionally, these buildings may have toxic substances like asbestos or mold, making it a health risk as well. Please don't risk your safety or well-being for the sake of curiosity. As always, if you liked the story, please hit the like button for me. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. You can always use the notification bell to set up your preferences. These things really help out the channel. Feel free to share this with anybody you think might enjoy hearing these tales. Until next time, be well, be happy, and stay safe. After all, it's a weird world.